Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi, my name's Mart, or Mart on YouTube. I'm 25, from London. Seeing the collapse of a secular Western society which stands for nothing and lets liberals walk all over it and its traditional values and morals and beliefs, that was a big wake-up call for me. I was a dating coach in my spare time. I saw how miserable men were living in this dystopian, weird world that we're currently living in the West, where men are women and women are men. And I saw so many women who threw themselves into that whole lifestyle of being a man, you know, having casual encounters, engaging in the hookup culture for some sense of validation, no matter how empty or temporary it was. And every girl that I know who's experienced that has always told me that they suffer from depression and anxiety, but can't seem to figure out why. I saw the idea of marriage and having a family destroyed whilst hedonism and sexual immorality was being promoted. I saw women who would have been happy wives being encouraged to sell sexually explicit content online. I saw adults encouraging childhood confusion which resulted in life-changing, life-ruining surgeries. I saw people so obsessed with social media and having clout that they would do anything, including sell their morals, for just a bit of airtime. And I thought to myself, is this not the work of Shaitan? As I researched more and more and I wanted answers to certain questions, I couldn't really find answers that really made sense to me. And I think this is quite common with Christian to Muslim reverts. Three forms of God, the contradictions in the New Testament, the fact that we don't know who the author actually was. Were they there at the time? Probably not. And on top of that, I didn't really like the fact that Christians typically let liberals walk all over their religion. This is meant to be your whole world, your whole existence is because of this. And yet you let liberals walk all over it. I didn't like that. Shortly after that, I met a brother who I'm very, very close with now. You know, during lockdown, we would go on walks and we became very, very close. We built a very tight bond. And he taught me about Islam. On my birthday, the same brother bought me an English translation of the Quran and the prayer mat. And the more that I read, the more that it started to make sense. A lot of my beliefs that I had formed, they started to be sort of pieced together. You know, the first time that I walked into a masjid and heard the adhan for the first time, well, in person for the first time, it was an emotional experience. I was definitely overwhelmed in that moment. But you know, the more that I went, the more that I felt the brotherhood. And that is something that you don't see anywhere else other than Islam. Because I guess we love each other for the sake of Allah. Even if we don't necessarily like each other's personality, we love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just carried on doing more and more research. And I think I wanted to not only just have this feeling, this connection with God, I wanted to logically and rationally accept Islam. So I did more research and, you know, the Quran predicted, it told us scientific miracles that were not known 1400 years ago. And modern science has only found these things out about 100 years ago. So certain things like that, the sort of mathematical miracles that I saw in the Quran as well, or that I researched about the Quran, you can't ignore these things. So yeah, after doing my research, I knew that I was Muslim. In my heart, I knew I was Muslim, but I was still reluctant. And the reason why I was reluctant was one big reason, and I think a lot of reverts can relate to this. You know, if I accept Islam, I'm also accepting that my family will not be accepted into Jannah if they continue to live their lives as non-Muslims, most likely. And I had so many emotional chats with my friends about this, and yeah, I think it was the first time that I've seen some of my friends' eyes water, and I'm sure vice versa. But I came to a point where it was a moment of realization that just because I feel sad about something and just because I don't like a certain aspect of something doesn't mean that it's not true. And so I thought about it and I was just like, the best chance of them entering Jannah is if I lead by example. I'm basically one of their first experiences of a Muslim. And if I act in the right way, if I set an example, you know, positive, you know, always having akhlaq, you know, good manners, having sabr, patience. The Western media has painted Islam and Muslims in such a bad light that it's a tough job to reverse that in someone who isn't Muslim, doesn't really have any Muslim friends. It's a very tough job to do that, but I noticed in the moment, I was just like, this is what I have to do. I'm sure there's a lot of reverts who can relate to that, but that is one of, if not the biggest thing to sort of overcome as a revert. I couldn't sleep properly for like 2 weeks. I took my shahada at London Central Mosque, alhamdulillah. My life has changed so much, but what I want to say is that my life has pivoted. I think, I still want money, I still want success, I still want a family, I still want all of these things. But the reason, the motivation behind it is different. It's not for the approval or attracting women. It's all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so I can provide for my family, so that I can contribute to society, give money, zakat, sadaqah. I can do all of these things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I try my best to keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my thoughts, My message to new reverts is, it gets easier over time. It really does. You just have to trust in God. And when things aren't going well, you just have to accept it for what it is and say, Allahu Alam. Because God knows best and this is His plan. And I guess a message to people who are interested in Islam, who are maybe even considering reverting, I would say just research more about Islam. If you take them steps closer to Islam, God will make it easier for you.